We are Plum Creek Church, and we are a place where you matter. Our mission here is centered around change lives, changing lives. We believe this happens through three important relationships: intimacy with God, intentionality with family, and influence with others. God has something He wants to say specifically to you wherever you are. Our hope is that you leave encouraged and closer to Him than ever before. We'd love to connect with you online at plumcreek.church or on social media to see how Plum Creek is impacting our community and what opportunities we have for you and your family to get connected. If you'd like to support the ministry we're doing here in Castle Rock, two easiest ways are through the Give tab on our website or via your mobile device by texting any dollar amount to 720-606-5563. It's a secure connection with simple instructions to get set up. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope you'll enjoy this message.
Good morning, everybody. Doing good? Thank you for being here today. Pastor Gary shared some exciting news with you. I have a little bit more. Last week, Easter Sunday, our parking team helped us park 1,867 cars. How about that, huh? That is awesome. Now, can you do me a favor? When you're leaving today, will you high five or roll the window down and say thank you to the team that helps us get in and out of here every single weekend? They're incredible, so thank you so much for your help. Our team did so amazing. There were 673 kids in our kids areas last week. Isn't that awesome? We have such an amazing crew that are volunteering and helping back there to lead our kids. And we set a record this week, but this is not what we're going to clap about, so hold your clap. We had 4,692 people last weekend, which is awesome. That's a record for us here at Plum Creek. But here's the best news. 82 people gave their hearts to Jesus last week. We can clap about that, right? It's what we do, I love our team. So excited to be able to serve alongside so many incredible people that are gifted and given of their time and effort and energy. It's amazing. So thank you for doing that. Also, on behalf of the Miller family, especially Josh, I would like to thank each and every one of you that chose to eat at Chick-fil-A. It was awesome. We weren't able to go, but we saw pictures. People were telling us how long they had to wait to get their food. And rumor has it, this hasn't been completely verified yet, but it was the single greatest day of sales in the history of the Castle Rock Chick-fil-A. So thank you guys for doing that. That was awesome. And this week we begin our new series called Why God? The timing is appropriate, and I feel like I needed this as much as you do. And to work on this message was therapeutic for me in a lot of ways because it caused me to turn inside and ask some questions and try and sort through some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. This is something that we all need to come to terms with in many ways. There is so much in life that happens that doesn't make sense. And nobody wants difficult, challenging, or heartbreaking circumstances or situations. I know I don't, but listen, we can't escape them. And if we're honest, we know that this happens. Sometimes life stinks and it hurts. And we need to understand how to walk through those kinds of situations. Now, we can try and numb ourselves to the sense of reality to that, pretending like that's not true. And I don't think we want to live our lives bracing for tragedy or difficulty, but we need to know that it's part of it. But you know, even as much as we try and pretend like that's not going to happen to us, there are those moments in life, whether it's through what you have to go through or a loved one, someone you care about, a dear friend, or even just watching the news. There are those things that grab our attention and shake us a little bit and remind us that life does have some challenges. No one is going to escape this. Everyone has, they're going to look different, but everyone goes through tough times. So today, if you're facing something and you're saying, man, I wish that I didn't have to go through this. I understand your heart, and I understand why you feel that way. If you're saying today, I don't understand, why God? Let me tell you, I'll just be honest with you, I ask that question as much as you do, and I need to hear his voice. Maybe you have thought to yourself, I believe in God, and I really had hoped and prayed that there would be a different outcome or there would be a different kind of circumstance than what I'm having to face right now. And if I were you, God, I'd play this one out a little different. Have you ever been there? I am in the middle of that myself. So what are we gonna do when God doesn't make sense? How are we gonna walk through those times that are so difficult for us? Because we know we're gonna face them for sure. If you haven't, or if you're not right now, there will be a time where you're facing something where you felt like God could have intervened, where God could have done something that would have made the situation different, that you wouldn't have had to hurt the way you're hurting or feel what you're feeling, that somehow the tough time could have been eliminated if God would have just moved how you want him to, how you would have asked him to. All of a sudden, if we're not careful, what we can do is find ourselves in a spot where we would call it a crisis of unbelief. A crisis of unbelief. Wait a minute, God, I thought you would, or what happened here, God? Were you like taking a nap on me here? Or how did this one go down? Why aren't you doing what I knew that you could? See, there's lots of different ways that we can respond in this types of situations in our life. The first thing, which the church has been notorious for doing, is just denying reality. You ever been there? Been to that church, right? Where everything's just like, yeah, we're great. Everything's awesome. And I don't know how to live that way. I think it's because I'm too emotional on the inside. My dad always said I read like a book. So if it stinks, you guys are going to know it. And this is a season that stinks for us. It's hard. But we can't deny reality, right? One of the things I love about our church and love about the way that we do life together is that it's okay to speak authentically. It's okay to say it hurts when it hurts and it stinks when it stinks. And we need to not pretend that the reality around us isn't happening. When it's tough, we need to be able to communicate that, and we need to be able to walk through those things together. Another common reaction to those kind of times, and if we're not careful, we can all be there, that we could get to the place where we just deny him. Like, God, I thought you would, you didn't, throw in the towel. And we don't want that to happen. And that's why this series is important. We don't want to be throwing in the towel when tough times come. And the third thing that we can choose to do, which is not easy, is we can choose to trust him. We can choose to trust him. Even when it doesn't make sense. We trust him. I can tell you that even when you get to the point where you make that decision, and I can share this from personal experience, that doesn't mean that magically the pain is going to go away. It doesn't mean that things will necessarily even get easier. They can sometimes get tougher for a while, and sometimes a long while. The pain is real, and it won't be. When you make that statement, drive the stake in the ground, I promise it won't be the last time that you'll struggle with your faith. So, welcome to Why God. Aren't you glad you're here, right? This is not all that encouraging, but we're going to walk through this together because I know if you continue to stick with the Lord, no matter what he does around you, I can assure you that if you hold on to him and you hold tight, at some point, he is going to take your faith to a new level. And in doing that, I assure you that if you hold on long enough, you'll be at a new place of intimacy, a new place of trust, and interestingly enough, a new place of security in your relationship with him. Perhaps a place of intimacy, trust, and security that you never even dreamed possible. So please hear me on this one as I've unpacked this in my own heart and thought about other people that I know that have gone through tough times too, people that I have great respect for. And as I've looked at those that I would call mentors and role models in so many ways that seem to have a deeply intimate relationship with the Lord, that there's just something different about their relationship. Almost 100% of the time, those people have gone through incredible challenges. It just seems to work that way. So how are we gonna make sense of what doesn't? There's a couple things I want you to remember. So grab a pen, and if you're going through a tough time, listen, I'm right there with you, and I wrote this for your heart today. And if you're not in a tough time right now, I wrote this for you too. because I want to help you save thousands of dollars on your therapy. And I love you, and I want you to be ready. So here's how this works. The first thing that we need to remember is this. Tough times are part of life. Tough times are part of life. If you knew you were going to get punched in the chin, you'd probably have an opportunity to throw your arms up and defend yourself, right? But if we walk around life with our chin stuck out and get surprised every time we get cold cocked, it just seems to hurt more. And we need to be reminded that this is a reality. There are tough times in life. John 16:33, Jesus said this, "I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world." This week, our crew helped me post a question on our Facebook page. And we asked this simple question, what is the hardest thing you've ever been through in your life? And can I tell you, it was hard to read, Because there's people that we know personally, that you know personally, that you may even be sitting next to today, that have gone through some incredibly difficult things. And if you're like me and you're a baby, when you read it, you cry. Because I can feel some of the pain. And people just were honest and vulnerable in sharing some of the things that they have had to walk through in their lives. And there's things about people that I know that I didn't today because of how vulnerable they were on our Facebook page. And you read stories about people that were very young when their parents passed away, or the loss of family members and siblings and children. Someone wrote about their boyfriend when they were in high school that passed away in Columbine tragedy, and car wrecks and sickness, suicides and miscarriages. And it hurts, right? To connect in some way with the pain that other people have walked through. And at the same time, there's an element of encouragement there because you know you're not alone in having to face tough times, because that's one of the tricks our enemy plays on us, doesn't he? That when you're going through a tough time, it's like kind of self-pity that you're the only one, right? And so today, if you haven't done that, my assignment for you this week is before you go to bed tonight, hop on the Plum Creek Facebook page and just read what some of the folks have posted. Allow your heart to be touched with the reality that tough times are real, and be encouraged if you're going through a tough time that you're not the only one that has. And then before you sign off, will you pray? There's some deep stuff on there. And if you choose to write a little something too, everybody's challenges look different, don't they? And we don't get to choose our battles, but we must walk through whatever it is that we have to face. And sometimes there's just something therapeutic about getting that out there a little bit. So I want to challenge you today, instead of asking why, to ask a different question. I want you to ask how. Because if your life is like mine, it doesn't seem like we always get a clear answer to the why, do we? As a matter of fact, it seems like that answer goes, or that question goes unanswered more often than not. And someday, when we stand with the Lord, we'll be able to sort some things out and understand a little differently. But right now, instead of asking why, just write that word down, how, and put a question mark behind it. Because when you ask God how you can best respond to the hardship you're facing, He will often reveal some of His plan, and it will unfold differently, and you will see yourself differently, understand yourself differently, and grow in your faith differently. When you ask the question, God, how? How do you want me to walk through this? How do you want me to see you in the middle of my storm? And it's important to ask those questions. And so, number two, after you have reminded yourself that tough times are a reality, the second thing that I must share with you today is that sometimes we need to remember that tough times can be our own fault. It can be our own fault. You see, the law of the harvest is real, and what you sow, you reap. And it's interesting that oftentimes we walk through difficult circumstances in our life that we kind of deserved. You ever been there? And it stinks, and it's hard. And sometimes we cry out to God, why did you let this happen? Right? And he's like, I didn't. Like, I tried to help you. I gave you a lot of wonderful stuff that should have helped you navigate out of this one so that you would have never had to head down this road. And sometimes if we don't pay attention, we can forget that tough times can be our own fault. Years ago, Beth had asked our kids to memorize some scripture, and my deep theologian, Megan, decided that she would memorize Proverbs chapter 19, verse 3. It's a great verse we all should remember. People ruin their lives by their own foolishness, and then they're angry at the Lord. I was like, where'd you get that one? That is awesome. If you can just remember that the rest of your life, you're going to be okay. But it's true, and we need to remember that sometimes tough times can be our own fault. And what I've learned is that we can spin in the vortex of our situation so much and forget to evaluate and ask ourselves if this is something that really is part of the law of the harvest, that we're sowing what we had already previously reaped. And that's an important question to ask. It's important to talk to the Lord about that. And we're going to talk how that happens here in just a minute. The third thing that I want you to remember is this, that God uses tough times in our lives. Like I said before, some of the people that I know that have the deepest walk with Jesus and the relationship with him that seems to just run to a new level of depth than what we most times experience, it's because they've gone through tough times. And God may lovingly allow you to go through a season of doubts and questioning and fear and insecurities and even unanswered questions because he's doing something in you. And he uses those tough times. Sometimes God just lights a fire underneath us so that he will have our attention and get us moving. Problems often point us in a new direction, and it's in that new direction we find motivation, and ultimately we can find change in our lives. And so my main thought for this weekend is this: God uses adversity to strengthen my faith. God uses adversity to strengthen my faith. The New Testament says it this way in James chapter 1. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Praise the Lord. It didn't say praise the Lord, that was my part. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow, so let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. God can test and grow your faith in tough times, and you know, as I do, that when life just seems to put you in that pressure cooker and you're feeling it from all angles, if you quit looking at the situation so much just for a second, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn about your faith, your walk with Jesus. And it's not the time to throw in the towel, because sometimes this testing is part of God's plan, and he's going to definitely use it for you to become the person he wants you to be. So think about the times in your life where you've developed the most as a person. Think about them for just a second. What was it that prompted that development? And if it's like my life, it was during a tough time, because that's what tough times do. And the way you deal with those challenges that you face in your life will really help you know about your heart. So what have the tough times that you have dealt with revealed about you and your faith? What have they showed you? And when you see that, does that scare you? Or do you feel like you leaned into Dad a little bit and were able to experience what he was wanting to do to grow you in your faith and your relationship with him? Romans chapter 5 says this, Romans 5 verse 3 and 4. We can rejoice too when we run into problems, for we know that they help us develop endurance, and endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope and salvation. So let's get practical for a second. What I want to share with you now are a couple of things that I have been thinking about a lot, and a couple of things that have helped me as I've been walking through a very, very difficult time in life. Because listen, there's always that prompting in the back of your head that's not from the Lord to throw in the towel. And That's never the option. Because personally, I need the towel to wipe my tears. And I've never seen my son nor seen my family work as hard as they are right now. And we need that towel to wipe ourselves because there's a lot of sweat in this thing right now. And I'm not going to throw down the thing that I need most. So how then do we walk through those seasons when a life doesn't work out the way you want? How do we deal with those circumstances when it just doesn't make sense and when you wish things were different? It's not a time to quit. We don't throw in the towel. We pick it up. And we also remember that scriptures are full of examples of people, real people, that have walked through very trying times. And it's an encouragement to read that, much like the Facebook posts, because you know you're not the only one that has had to have gone through tough times. And we can also learn from reading the stories of others as they walk through their challenges too. I think we think about Joseph for a second. You know his story? Betrayed at a level that would crush most of us. Yet in the middle of that pain, learning to forgive in a way that blows my mind. You think about the stories of guys like Gideon. He had a plan. He was scared to death. He had a plan and God kept saying, no, that's not it. Let me call the shots. Only to see that his plan that he thought made more sense, and if he can do math, it did. That wasn't God's plan. And for him to learn to trust in the midst of unsurmountable odds, it'll blow your mind. You think about Naomi and Ruth and Esther. Think about the Apostle Paul. You know, sometimes just like those people had to pray, we have to pray. Okay, I believe, right? But God, can you help me in my unbelief? Oh, I believe, but I'm scared. I don't like what I see, but help me. Help me with my unbelief. Help my faith in you to grow. And what God will say to us is this: I'm going to do something in you that you never dreamed possible. And it's going to be amazing. You will know me in a whole new way, a way that you wouldn't have been able to get to if you didn't go through what you're going through. So making sense of what doesn't, what do you do when God doesn't make sense? Remembering that God uses adversity to strengthen my faith. What do? I'm going to share with you two things. And I'm not telling you that I've done this 100% great, A++. It's probably more like a B-. The first thing, and I'm not great at this, is this. If you're going through a tough time right now in your life, please hear this. And if you're not, please hear this. This is for you too. The first thing, write it down. Be still. Be still. And I'm not great at that. I like fast pace, and I love to solve problems. I like to negotiate my way out of things. And what I've learned is that sometimes I can't. And I have the kind of personality that says when I start feeling like I can't, that I need to work harder. That I need to run faster. And that's not the answer. And I'm not great at this. And if you've been following Josh's story at all, you know that one of the things that he has taught me is to take it one day at a time. And I stink at that. Beth is doing amazing, living in the moment, and encouraging Josh and just facing what we have to face every day. And I keep doing this and looking around the corner, and it's kind of the dad thing, you know? I'm trying to block for my kid a little bit. And when I look around the corner, it freaks me out. It'd be better if I just blocked for him in the moment. But I'm not great at that. The psalmist wrote this in Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. And there's deep theology in that, guys. Because it's really hard to know him at the pace that most of us run. And the very thing that will give us the most strength to carry on is the thing that seems counterintuitive. And that is being still and knowing that he is God. And that's so vitally important because we need to be reminded every day that we are not God. And as good as we might be, we definitely need his help. And we need his strength. And some days, but there's nothing left. And you've given everything you can. You need dad to carry you. And that's easier when you have been still and you know with great certainty that he is God. So instead of trying to get yourself out, what if we just invested some energy in being still? Because sometimes, isn't that exactly what it takes to be still? You gotta force yourself. Force yourself. One of the things that's hanging on Josh's wall, and some dear friends have printed these little armbands for those of us that need to be reminded to keep praying for Josh, is this verse. And God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And we can stand on his truths and his principles. And in Joshua 1:9, there is this command. And it's very easy to read and very hard to live, especially if you're not being still and feeling our Heavenly Father's embrace. It says this is my command, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Been a lot of days in the last couple of months where I have felt the opposite of that verse. Be still. Doug, be still. And know that he is God. Be authentic. Tell him the truth. Tough times are tough. And do everything you can to stay faithful, to stay in the Word, to stay on your knees, and stay connected to the Lord. The Apostle Paul wrote it this way in Ephesians chapter 3. Circle this verse. Ephesians chapter 3, 16 and 17. I pray that from his glorious, and what's the next word? Unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit at work in you. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. If you're in a tough time right now, listen to me. Be still and know that he is God, and in his strength, you will have strength. And in those moments, you will have roots that grow down and hold you when the wind seems to be blowing hard. And if you're not going through a tough time right now, be still and know that he is God, because it's likely you're going to face some challenges and you want to have what we just read at work in your life. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. Because listen, don't we all know we don't get to always choose our races? How do we do this then? How do we run with endurance the race that is set before us? We do this by, what does it say? Keeping our eyes on the problem? No. Be still, and know that he is God. By keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. So be still, be still, be still, be still, be still. And number 2, work hard to maintain perspective. Maintain perspective. And again, I'm not great at this because I can become very preoccupied with what I have to face and with, in this situation, with what our family and especially Josh is having to face. And that's a really bad place to go, because you get lost in the vortex of the challenges around you and you forget to keep your head up and to look around and to know that you're not the only one that's having to go through a tough time. So what do? We remember that tough times are part of life. We evaluate and ask, because sometimes tough times can be our own fault. And then we remind ourselves that when we be still and know that he is God, that he uses tough times in our lives. Listen to what Paul said, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Those are strong words. I have been there. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So Paul then writes, so now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults and the hardships and the persecutions and the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So I want to share with you some of the stuff that we've been going through has been really, really hard on this daddy's heart. And you get it. Many of you have been through things similar or even more challenging. And in the early days at Craig Hospital, as Josh is starting to rehab, it was really hard for me because many of you, we've been doing life together for a decade plus now, and a lot of us all grew up with our kids going to the same stuff and participating in the same things. And if you ever saw my kid on a field, man, he's just a good athlete, and not the best, but he's really good. And I squint and in my mind's eye and heart see him running down a field and wrecking somebody when he was playing football, or in the top 5 in the state and scoring in lacrosse, scoring points all over the place. And it's been really hard to watch him struggle to take a step. And I remember this day when I was kind of wallowing. It's a good word. For what was happening in my heart, in my head, as I was watching my son struggle to take one step up, and asking the questions that we're addressing in this series. God, why? I don't want to watch this. And I was cheering on the outside for him and weeping on the inside. And one of the things that's so unique about Craig Hospital is that we've been dropped into lots of other stories on our floor. And we get to the place where we're cheering for each other and there to support each other. And when we families pass each other as we're back and forth to all these different therapies all day long, we check in and high five. And there's another pastor whose son is at Craig Hospital as well. I have a Joshua, he has a Caleb. And 5 years ago, their 7-year-old son died from cancer. And just a few months back, they live in Oklahoma, and their son was driving and pulled onto the interstate and hydroplaned into the other lane and got hit by a truck. And at this time, when I'm telling the story of this moment, he hadn't spoken yet, and he was still in his wheelchair. It's amazing the progress that he's made. He's doing really well. But I was wallowing in my little moment, and we crossed paths, and we were talking, and Josh was eating yogurt, and he was holding his own cup and feeding himself, which he couldn't do in the beginning. And this pastor, he stopped mid-conversation when I was wallowing in my little deal, and he said, Doug, I long for the day that my son will eat again. And as much as he needed to get that out and say it, I needed to hear it. I was like, okay. Lord, help me to get my head up. Because when we keep our head down, we lose perspective. So I would like to say that was the last time that I needed an attitude adjustment. But it definitely is not. Again, I told you I'm just sharing some great ideas with you that I'm trying to figure out too, right? You get that. And so just 2 weeks ago, I got home, and Beth and I have been 2 ships passing at night oftentimes because we're splitting responsibilities, helping to take care of Josh and being there with him. And Beth wasn't home. I was by myself. And again, it was one of those hard days, and I was struggling. And so I, instead of being still and know that he is God, I decided to watch Jimmy Fallon. That's what I was doing. And he makes me laugh, and I love his childlike heart. And I wasn't doing good, guys. I was struggling. And just blew my mind that God could have a divine moment for me in the middle of watching Jimmy Fallon. But that's exactly what happened. And the Lord, he wrecked me and got me set straight again. And so I want to wreck you and help you to be set straight too. And so one of the things that Jimmy had on that night was this amazing poet who does spoken word. And it felt like he had written this for me. So are you ready to get wrecked? Watch the screen.
Whenever I find myself complaining about the small things, I say to myself, the following are all true stories. May 26th, 2003, Aaron Ralston was hiking. A boulder fell on his right hand. He waited 4 days. Then he amputated his own arm with a pocket knife. On New Year's Eve, a woman was bungee jumping in Zimbabwe. The cord broke. She then fell into a river and had to swim back to land in crocodile-infested waters with a broken collarbone. Claire Champlin was smashed in the face by a 5-pound watermelon being propelled by a slingshot. Matthew Brobus was hit by a javelin. David Striegel was punched in the mouth by a kangaroo. The most amazing part of these stories is when asked about the experience, I heard they all said, I guess things could have been worse. So go ahead, tell me that you're having a bad day. Tell me about the traffic. Tell me about your boss. Tell me about the job you've been trying to quit for the past 4 years. Tell me the morning is a townhouse burning to the ground. Tell me the snooze button is a fire extinguisher. Tell me the alarm clock stole the keys to your smile, drove it into 7 a.m. and the crash totaled your happiness. Tell me. Tell me. Tell me, how blessed are we to have tragedy so small it can fit on the tips of our tongues? When Evan lost his legs, he was speechless. When my cousin was assaulted, she didn't speak for 48 hours. When my uncle was murdered, we had to find a search party to find my father's voice. Most people have no idea that tragedy and silence often have the exact same address. So when your day is a museum of disappointments, hanging from events that were outside of your control, when you find yourself flailing in an ocean of why is this happening to me, when it feels like your guardian angel put in this 2-week notice 2 months ago and just decided not to tell you, when it feels like God is a babysitter that's always on the phone, when you get punched in the esophagus by a fistful of life, remember that every year 2 million people die of dehydration. So it doesn't matter if the glass is half full or half empty, there's water in the cup. Sometimes you just gotta drink it and stop complaining. You see, Muscle is created by repeatedly lifting things that have been designed to weigh us down. So when your shoulders feel heavy, you gotta stand up straight. You gotta lift your chin. You gotta call it exercise. Remember that life is a gym membership with a really complicated cancellation policy. Remember that you will survive. Remember, things could be worse. Remember, we are never given anything that we can't handle. When the world crumbles around you, sometimes you gotta look at the wreckage and then build a new one out of all the pieces that are still here. Remember that you are still here. The human heart, it beats approximately 4,000 times per hour, and each pulse and each throb and each palpitation is a trophy engraved with the words, you are still alive. You are still alive. We are still alive. Let's act like it.
Will you bow your heads for just a minute? We'll post that for you because you need to watch it like 20 times, like tomorrow. And every time you do, you hear something new that will help you maintain perspective. And listen, friends, I know that there's someone here today that needed to hear this because you, like me, are going through difficult times and your heart is hurting. Maybe you feel like throwing in the towel. Maybe you already have, but you're here today. And I want you to hear what I have to say. I get it. I don't get your circumstances because they're different than mine, but I know how it feels to be trudging uphill. I know how it feels to have a heart that's broken. I know how it feels to not be able to finagle or talk your way out of it. So will you learn with me? Be still. And in that stillness, know better than you ever have before that He is God. And work hard to not be walking with your head down. Because when we walk with our heads down, we lose perspective so fast and get lost in the spin of your life. You are alive. And God has a plan for you. So lift your head and take advantage of what you do have by paying attention to what's around you and knowing that you're not the only one that's going through tough times. And it might just be your smile, your hug, your care, your prayer that will pull someone else through a very tough time too, because they know you understand. And perhaps today you're here and you've been trying to trudge through this life on your own without a relationship with God. And it's not a good idea. Living that way will take you down and take you out. And if you're here today and you never made a personal decision to to say yes to Jesus and to allow him to be the Lord of your life, there would be nothing that I could encourage you to do more than just that. And if that's you and you're here, I just want you to pray with me. Lord, I'm tired and I need your help. I've been grinding, trying to do this on my own, and I'm whooped, I'm worn out, and I need your help. So I thank you that you love me, that you care about me, that you would love me so much that you would come and die on a cross for my sins. And help me to understand that, to lean hard into your grace and your forgiveness and your strength and your power, because you're a God that's alive. Help me to understand what it means to be your kid. Help me to learn to be still and know you better. And Lord, for all of us that are here today, regardless of what we're facing, help us to prioritize our lives enough that we will, Lord, be still and know that you are God. In your name we pray. Amen.